Hi everyone, yasas, que kalos to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're going to be making the most amazing cheese pastries. These are sweet. The crust is so flaky and easy to make. The first time I had them was at a bakery in Whitestone, New York, known as Aphrodite's Bakery, which if you're ever in New York, definitely go over and check them out and tell them that I sent you. Everything is good there. They have really good cannolis, amigdalota, which are these almond meringues, rainbow cookies, you name it, it's delicious in there. But these pastries are to die for. And since I'm in New York only a couple times a year, I decided let me recipe test and figure out how to make them at home. And these come so close. Let's get started. And we're going to begin with the pastry, and most of these pastries are made with a pie crust type dough, but that's a little bit too finicky for me. Every time there's a pie crust recipe, I use my cream cheese pastry recipe, which is super simple. You don't have to worry about adding ice cubes or the perfect temperature or the perfect texture. You just mix it all together and you forget about it, and it's flaky, light, and so delicious. It starts off with 2 sticks of butter, that's a ½ pound, and always use unsalted butter when you're making dessert. Make sure that it's nice and soft and at room temperature so it creams easily. And then my recipe calls for 6 ounces of soft cream cheese, but cream cheese is sold in 8-ounce packages here, which is a ½ pound. I'm not gonna what am I gonna do with the 2 ounces? I'm just gonna add it all in here. It should be fine. If it's a little bit on the sticky side, I'll add maybe a tablespoon or 2 of flour. Let's see how this goes. And to that, I'm going to add a little pinch of salt, like a 1/4 teaspoon. Attach the flat beater to my mixer and beat this until it's nice and creamy and everything comes together. High speed. Okay, just takes a few seconds. And now I have 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm just going to add those straight in. So easy. And I'm just going to mix this on low to medium speed until a dough is formed. As soon as all of the ingredients come together, it's ready. And that's it. This is the consistency and the texture that you're looking for. It should be very moist dough, sort of sticky, just like this. I'm just going to transfer it to my counter. And that's perfect. That little extra bit of cream cheese did not change anything about the recipe. Just put it all together. You might have some little bits of dried crumbled dough at the bottom of your mixing bowl. That usually happens because the beater doesn't really reach everything. Now, at this point, you want to let the dough rest just a little bit. So just set it aside and cover it with a clean kitchen towel or something, a piece of plastic. And now we're going to make the filling. So before we make the filling, I'd like to say something about the dough. If you're making this dough, I highly recommend that you make a double batch of it because it freezes well for months. It'll stay fresh for like 2 or 3 months in your freezer if it is tightly wrapped with plastic wrap or put in an airtight a freezer safe bag or something like that, and you can make so many things with this. I use it most times anytime there's a pie crust recipe. I use it to make cookies. Arugula cookies are made with this. You can make little turnovers or pastries just like this one. It is great to have on hand, and I usually make double batches of things that are freezable because I like to have my freezer well stocked. As a matter of fact, I have a video coming up with a bunch of recipes that I make that are freezer friendly, so look out for that one. Let's make the filling now. Okay, so for the filling, you're going to need 8 ounces, which is ½ pound, of cream cheese that's nice and soft and at room temperature. Leave it out for like an hour before you use it. But if you forget to do that, you can always take it out of the foil and put it in the microwave for a few seconds until it's nice and soft. Over here, I have 1 egg yolk. You can put the egg yolk in at the end so you can adjust the sweetness. You're going to need 3 or 4 tablespoons of granulated sugar. If you like it less sweet, go ahead and add less sugar. That's fine with me. And you can just do that by putting the egg in last and tasting it as you go. We're also going to need a little bit of pure vanilla extract, about ½ to 1 teaspoon. I'll go with 1 teaspoon. I love vanilla. And that's it. You just mix this until everything is nice and smooth. Now, if you want to take out a hand mixer, you can do that. But if you have a little bit of patience and a fork, it'll do the job. Okay, I'm going to switch over to a little spatula just to get everything incorporated properly. And don't worry if it doesn't look as smooth as it would if you were using a hand mixer or even a stand mixer. It's going to bake and you won't even see it. It'll be perfectly fine. This is looking a little bit rough, but it's fine, trust me. Okay, now let's roll out the dough. My dough has rested for a little bit. You're going to want to make sure you have some sort of a round cookie cutter. This is a 3-inch round biscuit cutter or cookie cutter. A little bit of all-purpose flour to help everything roll out easily. Just keep that handy. Keep in mind that this is a sticky dough, so you might need a little more flour than you anticipate. And just roll this out very thin, about 1/8 of an inch in thickness. Really, I don't measure. I just lay it out very, very thin. And if it sticks, just go ahead and add some more flour. You want to have 2 trays ready lined with parchment paper, and go ahead and cut the rounds out as close together as possible. And this is the thickness that you're going for. I hope you could see that. Very, very thin, because these are going to bake fairly quickly in the oven, and they are going to puff up just a little bit and become nice and flaky. So you want them to be nice and thin. The scraps can just be rolled up again, gathered up, and just squeezed together. And then you can continue to roll these out until you get as many rounds as you can out of this dough. This makes about 30 pastries. So let's work with the ones that we already cut out. Okay, so just take a little bit of the filling, I would say like half a teaspoon or so, and go ahead and put it on one side of the pastry round. Then fold it over and just press the ends together. Now, before I move on, let me say that this cookie cutter that I have is decorative like this, but it could just be plain because you don't really need these decorative edges. You're going to use the fork anyway to create a nice pattern. Just press it down to seal it even better, and then you have this really pretty design on the edges. See that? And then go ahead and put it on the trays that you have lined with parchment paper. Keep doing this until you run out of the filling. The filling might run out first. You're going to have a few extras of these. You can make extra filling and make a few more. I just like to dust them with a little bit of sugar, you'll see in the end, and bake them. So resist the urge to overfill these because you're just going to waste the filling. The filling is just going to ooze out. All you need is about a half a teaspoon of the filling. That's more than enough. All right, so I'm going to continue filling these and rolling out the remaining dough, and then we're going to move on to the last step. So if you're careful with the filling, there's enough filling here to make 30 to 31 max pastries. I've assembled 31 here. I did have a little bit of dough left over. You can take that leftover dough, wrap it in plastic, label it, and freeze it. But there's so little of it left over. What I did was I just used a smaller cutter and I just rolled out the dough to the same thickness, maybe a tiny bit thicker. And I just cut out as many little rounds as I could. Now it's time for the topping. So for the topping, you need to melt about 3 to 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and then combine sugar in a separate bowl, half a cup of sugar and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Cinnamon is not traditionally sprinkled on top of these, but it goes so well together with the cheese. Mix that all up. Brush the top of the pastries with the melted butter, the rounds too, because just bake them off. They're so good with coffee. And then sprinkle a generous amount of the cinnamon sugar over the top. I'm not baking both trays. This made 2 trays plus the little ones. The little ones I'm going to bake off, the little rounds, and 1 tray of these. The rest, I'm going to freeze them. Now, once they're frozen solid, you put them in the freezer for about an hour or so. And as soon as they're frozen solid, you can transfer them to a freezer safe bag. Make sure that you label the bag so that way you know what they are when it comes time to make them. And I also take that little piece of parchment paper that was underneath them and I fold it up and I put it in the bag so I can reuse it when I bake these off. When they're frozen, you want to thaw them out on a baking tray. And once they're perfectly thawed out, then you bake them. The fresh ones I baked at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure that the oven is preheated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Bake them on the center rack for between 12 to 15 minutes max. Keep an eye on them. My oven has them perfectly baked at about the 12 to 13 minute mark. As soon as they're golden around the edges, they're ready. The smaller little circles without the cheese in them were ready in 10 minutes. Take them out and let them cool completely. Make some coffee and then they're going to be ready to serve. All right, so my pastries have cooled down and it is time for the taste test. I made some delicious Greek coffee because these go so well with coffee. And just look at how perfectly golden they are all around. These baked in, again, like 12, 13 minutes. You cannot beat that. If you're going to be baking the frozen ones, I suggest thawing them out completely before putting them in the oven. Otherwise, they won't bake evenly if they're frozen since they're baking at that high temperature. So thaw them out. They're just going to take about 30 or 40 minutes at room temperature once you put them on the tray. And then you bake them just like I did for 12 to 13 minutes or however long it takes your oven to get them to this beautiful golden color. Look at how flaky the crust is. Now, I know that most people are used to making pie crust and they've had horrible experiences, especially if you're new to baking. It's just so finicky. You have to get it to the right amount of ice cold water. You can't overwork it. The best thing about this dough is even if you roll it out 3 or 4 times like we already did, it's still going to come out flaky and tender and so good. You never have to make pie crust again any other way. Time for the taste test. Oh my goodness. Somebody better take these away. Again, that crust, that pastry is so flaky. I love the sugar on top with the cinnamon. It adds a little bit of crunch and sweetness. That filling is so creamy and so good. You guys are gonna love these. And look at the little rounds too. These are also really good with coffee. Take a little bite of that too. Delicious. A little sip of coffee. Yum. I hope you guys give this recipe a try. The exact measurements are on the website www.dimitrasdishes.com. Let me know what you want to learn how to make next in the comments section down below. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Yes, us.